about you guys, but I feel like I've gotten to the point where I'm like, there's a lot to know going into this course. But it's really everything you learned in Chem 50. And there's even some stuff that I've left out of here that you're expected to know. But the next one's a big one. The next one is the concept of a mole. So a mole, as a review, it's just a counting number like a dozen. So a dozen represents 12 things. A mole represents 6.022 times 10 to the 23 things. I didn't write things because it specifically means atoms, right? So why do we have such a huge number? Well, because atoms and molecules are tiny. So you would never be able to, count them or weigh them because they would weigh so little. So what we do is that we make a mole of them. So we do a group of them so that we can actually measure them in grams on a scale. So it's known that 1 mole of carbon weighs 12.01 grams, or 1 mole of water weighs 18.016 grams. So they're real world like measurements for a microscopic thing like an atom. Now, how do we know it weighs those things? Well, someone way smarter than us has done that. But where we're going to find them is on our periodic table. Now, when you look at your periodic table, they are all listed in the number here. So underneath the element name, well, the element symbol and above the element name, you're going to have this number. This is your mass number. Now, technically, these are in atomic mass units, which is 1/12 the mass of a carbon-12, but we're just going to say that it's grams, and we're going to call it the molar mass. So it's going to be the mass of 1 mole. So if I wanted to find the molar mass of carbon dioxide, this would consist of 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. 1 carbon atom weighs 12.01 grams. How do I know? Well, 2 places. One, I can go to my periodic table if I know where carbon is and I can take the number off of there. Or if you're feeling kind of lazy and you don't feel the need to memorize your periodic table, it is good to know where things are, right? But you can also go on here and you can say carbon is 12.01. So the atomic mass, or the mass that we will use in grams, is listed with this alphabetical list. So carbon is 12.00 or 12.01. And then we know that this is also containing oxygen, which is 16.00. You'll notice every single one of these measurements is given to 4 sig figs, except for something like actinium or americium, which are ones that we aren't going to really ever encounter. Okay, awesome. So here we go. When I'm looking at the molar mass of carbon, it was carbon dioxide. It was 1 carbon, 2 oxygens. 1 carbon weighs 12.01 grams per mole. And oxygen, there's 2 of them, and they each weigh 16 grams per mole for a total of 14.01 grams per mole. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to do nitrogen, dinitrogen oxide. So you're going to have 2 nitrogens and 1 oxygen. Then we're going to look up nitrogen. I believe nitrogen is 14.01. Nitrogen, there it is, 14.01. So there's 2 of the 14.01s, and then there's the 1 of the oxygen, which is 16. And you'll notice that in the example, I put units on there and all the things, but I'm showing you what I would actually do in my work. So then we're just putting into our calculator 2 times 14.01 plus a 16, which is going to give a molar mass of 44.02 grams per mole. Maybe you're getting the idea from this that we use this as a conversion if we want to go from grams to moles or moles to grams. Okay. This next one is nickel carbonate. So the first thing we have to do is figure out what the compound formula would be. So this is telling me that it's nickel 3 plus. Then if I go and I look up carbonate, I believe it's a 2 minus, but let's just double check. Carbonate. There it is, 2 minus. So the first thing you have to do is write the balanced chemical compound. So it's going to be nickel 2, carbonate 3, right? So then when we're writing what this is going to consist of, it's 2 nickels plus 3 carbons plus 9 oxygens. So then we look up how much a nickel is going to weigh. I'm just going to cheat with my alphabetized list. So nickel is 58.69. Carbon we already know is 12.01. And then oxygen we already know is 16. So I find what often happens is that the elements get repeated a lot and you start having them pretty memorized. So then we're going to type in 2 times 58.69 plus 3 times 12.01 plus 9 times 16. And that is how we calculate our molar mass. So then my molar mass is going to be 297.41 grams per mole. Awesome. Go and practice a few of those.